If you haven't met Matt Buckwalter, you saw him Mississippi dancing. Okay, so we'll play that one more time so you can at least sing his name as you're going home. But Matt, why don't you share with us what's on our heart, and thanks for your leadership.
Thank you, Justin. In the spring of 1934, my grandfather was 9 years old. He was the third of 5 children that were growing up just east of where we now stand. He was growing up on a small farm. And things were pretty good, even though the nation was immersed in the Great Depression. Things were difficult all around, but they had family. Later on that summer, an event took place that would redirect the course of my grandfather's life, and through that, my life. Went to Temple University, had the tumor removed in September of that year. Things cleared up for about 2 months, and then the double vision and headaches that originally triggered the signs of that tumor returned in November. He went back to Temple, and they did a significant surgery, but they were unable to remove everything. And so my great-grandfather returned home, paralyzed on one side and knowing he was going to die. His wife was pregnant. He had just found out with their 6th child. So he was laying there facing some very, very difficult realities. And he didn't want to die, not knowing how his family would be provided for. And one day he had a dream, or a vision, as he would describe it, where somehow he was shown that his family would make it. And it filled him with this peace. And so this calm came over him that enabled him to just relax. His wife gave birth to their 6th child. He was able to hold her. 22 days later, he passed away. And my great-grandmother was left as a mother of 6 children, right in the middle of the Great Depression, facing some broken dreams, some deep disappointment, and some significant loss. She had some big choices to make. What was she going to do? In those days, in many of those situations, families split up. Children were moved around to different folks. That wasn't what she wanted, so she dug in her heels, and she began to fight for her family. And though they were very poor, and so their times were tough, but they stayed together. My great-grandmother kept them that way. The loss that she had suffered did not frame the way she chose to respond to the future. She did not allow it to define her. She raised her family until they were able to move out of the home. Suffered another loss when her youngest son was tragically passed away at 17 years of age. And she had another choice to make. What will I do? You know what she decided to do? She decided to move from the outskirts of the city right into the heart of the city because she fell in love with the children of Lancaster City. And she made a choice to move, physically move, as a widow in her 50s into the city to help teach children how to sew, how to can, how to cook. She invested herself financially, sending children to summer camp. And she chose to overcome the very real loss and disappointment and chose to give herself anyway. How many of you in this room tonight have suffered some substantial disappointment or loss over the course of your life? Probably most of us. Did you see Rosemary up here tonight? Oh man, I loved it, Rosemary. I just loved it. She's up here, and it's like my sister-in-law leaned over to me and she said, you know, every time she spoke a truth about who she was, it was like she was fighting to get it out. She was laughing and whatever. But what I saw in her was she's saying, I have a voice. I want to dream. I can be somebody. All I need is some space to provide that. So what does my great-grandmother have to do with us tonight? With where we're going, a heads up, with what we're about to do? I'm glad you asked. I want to talk about that. And I want to start by telling you a little bit more about how we developed this relationship, this very unique partnership between Dr. Martin and the Fulton crew and the FlameTime Heads Up crew. Because in the beginning of the 2011-2012 school year, there was no extended day program happening at Fulton. But a number of people, I don't know if I can zero it on the right table, Kathleen First, I see her, Pam Smith, I see her, Dr. Martin, Justin Rule, and others poured themselves into a grant writing effort that was set up to provide funding that would create an opportunity, create some space for a community school to develop at 4 of our elementary schools. Each elementary school was paired with a lead agency. We were paired, Heads Up was paired with Fulton Elementary School. And the arrangement was that these 21st century learning grants that come from the federal government would pay to support programming for 3 years. And that's been awesome. Because what we've been able to do in those 3 years is we've been able to build. While they were writing that grant, I was literally, I had just moved back from North Carolina. I was a middle school principal there. And so to help support my family as I moved back and tried to figure out where's the spot for me to serve right now. I was painting and doing different work for a contracting friend of mine. One day I was painting up on a ladder about 3:30 over on just beyond Pearl Street, over in that section of the city. And as I was there, a group of about 40 kids came back into the neighborhood. They were released from school. And I watched them, and I went in my heart, I went, who is with these kids? I mean, because I saw the potential there. Like, look, when I see a Nigel, when I see Mikey, when I see Khalil, when I see them up here breakdancing, I see more than that. See, because they're improvising, they're solving problems. They're using their gifts to bring life to us. So many of us, you can feel it in the room. People are like, oh, this is so good. And so I'm watching those children that day in October of 2011. I'm watching them walk past me, and I'm going, who's with these kids? Man, what an opportunity. So a few weeks later, Justin calls me and says, hey, we're writing this grant. If we can get it through, I want you to come lead this program. And you know, I had been a principal, I had been a teacher, served in other community leadership roles, and I thought, an after-school director doesn't really sound all that glamorous, you know. But it was like, Justin spoke of a seed, it was like a seed. Something was in my heart. And it began to grow. I met Dr. Martin. She started to share her passion for excellence. And we created this family. And so the way it worked was, stage 1 in developing a community school was building an extended day program from 3 to 6 each day so that the students would have some place to come into. And with Heads Up, what Justin had built in the years prior was relationships with all kinds of creative artists. Where's Tim Riggs? Stand up wherever you are, Tim. He's our junkyard drummer. He's an acting teacher. He does it all. Look, what you saw was I can't dance, right? Very clearly. Okay, everybody got that. What I can do is create a space where creative artists like Tim and Sam and Paul and Angel, the rest of our staff, they come in and they get these kids in motion in a way that unlocks something inside of them. And it's not algebra, it's not math and science, but what it might do is unlock a desire in them to be in school, so that they continue to get both skills that they need, so that as they continue to move forward in life, they've got that whole package. There's a book out called Global Achievement Gap, talks about how the 21st, even some of our best public schools are really struggling to teach skills that are really necessary, like the ability to improvise, or the ability to communicate face to face. You see that the partnership we have with Dr. Martin, it's allowing these students that space. So year 1, that's what we did. We created that space for it to happen. And what we saw was, while we were able to do some good things, we needed to have more of a family. So we changed it in year 2 to where we said we want to have our staff work the whole way through from 3 to 6 each day. And when the kids come down at 3 o'clock, they sit down at a table just like you're at. And they have a FlameTime family leader, a FlameTime mom or dad that are there. They hang out with them. They have snack for 15 minutes. Then they go out and they have fitness for 40 minutes. They come back in, they sit in their tutoring groups where we have the most awesome teachers all of anywhere. They're just awesome. They teach during the day. It's not easy. Come for a visit sometime. Check out the way that they're investing. It's like you get this down, then the state says do this, then you get kids who are not interested at all in doing it, not only the state's way, your way, any of it, and then we say, hey, could you stay after school and be part of this program that's a little less structured, and they do it. And guess what that did? That made our program cohesive. And because Dr. Martin believed in us, the teachers were willing to take a chance and come in. And so for that hour, they get excellent feedback from their teachers. And they get another touch point with an adult who cares about them. See, because this whole 2.5 years, I've been in a master's program. And one of the things that one of my classes studied last winter was we looked at extracurricular activities. We looked at the research of it. Hundreds of pages of it. We poured over it together. And the research is conflicting in a lot of ways. For instance, in some high school sports that girls get involved with, they are less likely to enter into risky behavior. What's termed risky behavior? Boys, on the other hand, who get involved in, say, high school football, are more likely to get involved in risky behavior. So there's conflicting evidence in the research all across the board. Two things come through that can be said across the board about if you want to have extracurricular activities that will benefit the students. Here's what you need. Number one, you need to sustain it across years. It needs to be across the years. It can't be something that's here and gone and here and gone. It's got to be across years. Number two, it's got to create the most opportunities for a one-to-one connection with an adult. So what we created in year 2 was a family that built a bridge between the teachers at Fulton and our staff so that our students know every day they come down, they're hanging out with that same person. They're building a relationship with them. And guess what? Some of our students have been with us 3 years. They know us well. Here they go, the hands shot up. You see that? They've been with us. They know us well. And look, we know their stories. Like if I was to tell you what Anijah was like in 1st grade, and Dr. Martin, I'll tell you, Dr. Martin, I did not think we would see Anijah as a 3rd grader in the program. I'm talking about, you saw her on the ground like this, breakdancing? That was just like her trip from tutoring to fitness and back again. She was not this model student that you think about. But guess what? There's a seed. Come on. There's a seed in her. How many of you see it when she's up there on the screen? How many of you see that in Michael when he's singing that song? He said, this is my first trip to the studio, but I know I'm coming back again. I love that, Mikey. I love that. Because you know what it says to me, Mikey? It says, I've got a voice, I'm going to speak life, and I'm going to go after my dreams. And Mikey, that is what we're about. So year 3, we moved from our temporary location off of South Duke at the Rockland Center, we were there while our building was undergoing a $12.4 million renovation that is awesome. And we moved back in to our home school, which has a history that's amazing. Many of you probably saw Lincoln. Many of you are familiar with Thaddeus Stevens. His grave is right beside our school. Some of you also might be familiar with the World War II decorated hero, Dick Winters. He went to that school when it was boys' high school back in the early 1920s, 30s. So what I'm saying is we moved back into that building that has a history, that has a seed in it of people who have shaken the nation with some leadership. And we moved back in there and Dr. Martin says, okay, I remember her sitting with Justin and I last year, she said, we need to go to the next level of this community school. And we knew I had a lot of work to finish up in my grad program, so we hired Sarah Farbo to come in as the community school director. I moved over and just began to focus just on FlameTime. And what Sarah's been able to do this year is to build partnerships with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus community partners. Churches, business, it's like this room. And Sarah, take a look around. I mean, you're responsible for a lot of the connections that are in this room. And she's built those because she gets, like Dr. Martin gets, like we get, that it takes that whole village to bring us up. And that's what we focused on this year and doing FlameTime well. And what you saw in that video is what we want to do. We want to create space for kids to get to that seed so that they can speak that truth over themselves and they can go for it. It's not just as easy to say you can be whatever you want to be. know, it takes work. My great-grandmother had to overcome some very significant losses and disappointments. The loss and disappointments that our children go through. When you take time to sit and learn the things that they're working through. When you sit with their parents and you learn. Their situations in many ways are like my great-grandmother. But what happened to her? Here's what happened. For a while, she went on government assistance, and it helped give her enough to push through. And the rest of the community came around and supported her. And then she began to give back and give back and give back and give back. Here's the reality. In this city, our children are growing up. They will either learn to give life back to us in this community, or they will do something less. I believe we can raise them up to be life-giving. But it won't just happen by saying, well, they can make it. So, the government had given us some seed money. The first 3 years of the grant expire on Sunday. So what are we going to do? Well, here's what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to sustain the work that we started. We have 70 families that we serve in the extended day program, 440 students that we serve at Fulton as a whole. We best not turn our back on these families and give them one more reason not to trust. It's best for the community gathered in this room, which is so exciting to me that you're all here. I mean, people from across political boundaries, people from across religious boundaries, people from across both sides of the aisle coming in and saying, I am curious about what you guys are doing. So the first thing we want to do is we want to sustain it. So the program, the grant gave us about $75,000 a year to do what we've already begun to do. So we need to generate that. The second thing is we want to advance. So maybe you're like Tim, who you work at the Y, you teach drumming on the side, and you do whatever you can do so you can get in and teach these kids because that's what you love. Now my hat's off to Tim, but I hope that what we can do is begin to generate income so we can bring those staff in at 10 o'clock, that they can stay till 6 o'clock, that they can then help cover classes and help infuse some of the life and energy and motion and activity into our school day. That will help take some pressure off of our teachers. One of the things that the school principal told us when we were out there, she said, we started this program to really improve the mental health of our school. And she said, some of you think I'm talking about the mental health of our students. She said, I'm talking about the mental health of our teachers. Because when we're able to cover classes for them, take some pressure off them, remove that 1 or 2 student from their class who needs that affection and love of a one-to-one connection, they are more fresh and more able to carry out their purpose. Third thing we're going to do is we want to unleash creativity into this city. On Saturday night, our Junkyard Drummers will be at the Barnstormers. Look, here's the thing about this stuff. That seed is in all of us, and it starts to get contagious. Because when I see Anijah dance, or Mikey dance, or Khalil dance, or I see Gustavo take leadership on the drums, or I see Rosemary fight through her fears to share, I go, you know what? There's more inside of me. It's contagious. It begins to spread. This is what we want to do. This is where we want to go. This is a special night. This is a special partnership. This is a special community. I'm so glad that each one of you took time to be here tonight. So what can you do? Many of you have already done things. You sponsored tables. You helped create videos. Some of you volunteer. Let me talk about Mr. Graham for just a moment, and then you can clap. You stay standing. Here's what Graham is, okay? Graham is, well, here's what he really is. He's a teddy bear filled with love. He disguised himself during the daytime as a branch manager for Susquehanna Bank. But one of his passions is Legos. He builds Legos like you wouldn't believe. I have a fish on my desk, an airplane with movable wings. I don't understand how he does it. He loves Legos. So when we started back 2.5 years ago, I said, Graham, would you be willing to come in and do a Lego club? So he came in and he started building with these kids. And you should see him. He just dumps the Legos out on a big rug in one of the classrooms. Kids gather around. He gives them a target for the first 20 minutes to build this. Then he gives them free building time. And they gather around him because it's an adult who cares and is there. And they know. He gives us Monday nights. Every Monday he just comes in. And it breaks my heart because it's the answer to the question I had when I was on the ladder. Who's with these kids? And Graham's one of those who's answered that. Nobody's paying him to be there. There are days when if he had a lot more hair, he'd pull it out. I mean, it's tough. Am I right? There are days when he comes to me and he's like, man, for real, do you know the list of kids that you gave me and what they put me through today? Maybe you don't just want to support financially. Maybe you want to give time. Maybe you want to give an idea. Maybe you have an idea of how a business could partner with us in a new way. I'm not sure, but we want to create space for this community to help sustain what we're doing.